The moment I saw her walk through the door, something inside me went cold. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver, but the kind that freezes your blood, that makes time stop. 5 years of marriage, and I'd never seen her in person, only in photographs James had reluctantly shown me when I'd first asked about his past relationships. Sophia Martinez, tall, elegant, with those impossible cheekbones and dark eyes that seemed to burn right through you. She wasn't supposed to be here, not tonight of all nights, not at our anniversary celebration. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The string quartet in the corner of our rented ballroom was playing something soft and romantic, and waiters in crisp white shirts glided between our guests, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Everything was perfect. The lighting, the flowers, the ambient chatter of our closest friends and family. James had spared no expense, insisting we celebrate our 5th anniversary in style. "Only the best for my Caroline," he'd said, kissing my forehead that morning. Now here she was, his ex-fiancée, standing in the entrance like she owned the place, scanning the room with predatory focus. "Who invited her?" my sister Rebecca whispered. Suddenly at my elbow, she'd spotted Sophia too. "No one," I said, my voice barely audible over the music. "At least I certainly didn't." Rebecca's gaze hardened. "Want me to have security escort her out?" I hesitated. Making a scene would only draw attention. Besides, there was something about the way Sophia carried herself, determined, almost grim, that made me curious. What could be so important that she'd crash our private celebration? "Not yet," I said. "Let me talk to James first." But when I turned to look for my husband, I realized he was nowhere to be seen. Just moments ago, he'd been chatting with his business partner by the bar, champagne flute in hand, looking devastatingly handsome in his tailored suit. Now the spot was empty. I glanced back at Sophia, who had now stepped fully into the room. Under the crystal chandeliers, I could see she was carrying a large manila envelope. Her knuckles were white from gripping it too tightly. Whatever was in there, it mattered to her. A lot. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Fine, James," I told Rebecca, keeping my eyes on Sophia. "Tell him his ex is here." Rebecca nodded and disappeared into the crowd. I took a deep breath, smoothed down the silk of my emerald gown, the one James said brought out the green in my eyes, and started walking toward Sophia. Before I could reach her, our eyes met across the room. Recognition flashed in hers, followed by something that looked almost like pity. That's when a cold finger of dread traced its way down my spine. She hadn't come here for James. She'd come for me. "Caroline," she said when I finally stood before her. My name in her mouth sounded foreign, rehearsed. "I'm sorry to intrude on your celebration." Up close, she was even more striking than in her photos. No signs of aging despite the 5 years since she and James had broken up. I forced myself to stand taller. "Sophia, this is certainly a surprise." I kept my voice steady, years of corporate negotiations coming in handy. "I don't recall sending you an invitation." "You didn't," she said simply. "But after what I discovered, I couldn't just call. Some things need to be delivered in person." She held out the manila envelope. I stared at it, but didn't take it. "Whatever issue you still have with James, tonight isn't the time or place," I said, finding my resolve. "If you'd like to schedule a meeting for another day." "It's not an issue with James," she interrupted, her voice softening. "It's for you. About James." The way she emphasized his name made my stomach twist. I became acutely aware of the weight of my wedding ring, the diamond catching the light as my hand trembled slightly. "Caroline!" James's voice boomed from behind. Me, falsely cheerful, but with an undercurrent of tension I'd rarely heard before. There you are, darling. I turned to see my husband approaching, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Rebecca trailed a few steps behind him, looking worried. James? Sophia acknowledged him coolly, not a hint of emotion in her voice. Whatever they'd once shared seemed long dead, at least on her part. What are you doing here? He asked her, positioning himself slightly in front of me. Protective or controlling, I couldn't tell which. Delivering the truth, she replied. Something you should have done years ago. James laughed, but it was hollow. Always so dramatic. Some things never change. He turned to me, his expression softening. Sweetheart, would you mind giving us a moment? Old history to put to rest, that's all. I looked between them, at the envelope still clutched in Sophia's hand, at the slight sheen of sweat now visible on James's forehead, despite the cool temperature of the room. Actually, I said slowly, I think I'd like to hear what Sophia has to say. James's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Caroline, please. It's our anniversary. Don't let her ruin it with whatever game she's playing. It's no game, Sophia insisted, holding the envelope out again. And I'm not here to ruin anything. The truth might hurt, Caroline, but lies destroy. You deserve to know. The guests nearest to us had begun to notice the tense exchange. Conversations quieted. Curious glances were thrown our way. My mother-in-law Martha was watching from across the room, her perpetually judgmental expression now mixed with alarm. This isn't the place for this discussion, James hissed, glaring at Sophia. Then where is? She challenged. Every time I've tried to contact Caroline, my messages mysteriously never reach her. My calls get blocked. Even when I went to her office, I was turned away because Mrs. Hawthorne isn't accepting visitors. Very convenient, James. I stared at my husband, confusion washing over me. You've been blocking her from contacting me? Why would you do that? James ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen only a handful of times in our relationship. She's been harassing us, Carolyn, ever since we got engaged. I didn't want to worry you with it. Sophia let out a bitter laugh. Harassment? Is that what you're calling it? 5 years of trying to warn her about what you did to me? What you're probably doing to her right now? The envelope she held suddenly seemed to pulsate between us, a living thing filled with secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover. Rebecca, I said, not taking my eyes off James, would you please ask the staff to hold the dinner service? And maybe suggest to our guests that they enjoy the terrace for a while? Rebecca hesitated only briefly before nodding and moving away to carry out my request. James reached for my arm, his fingers pressing a little too firmly into my skin. Caroline, don't do this. Not tonight. I gently removed his hand. If what she has to say is nothing, then we can all laugh about it later and enjoy our dinner. But I need to hear it. Something flashed in his eyes. Fear? Anger? It was gone too quickly to identify. Fine, he said tightly. Let's go somewhere. Private? The three of us moved to a small adjoining room that had been set up as a coat check. As James closed the door behind us, shutting out the murmur of our guests and the soft music, I felt like I was stepping into an interrogation room rather than a simple coat check. Sophia wasted no time. She handed me the envelope. Open it, she said. The envelope was heavy, filled with what felt like documents and photographs. My hands shook slightly as I broke the seal. This is ridiculous, James muttered, pacing the small space. I can't believe you're entertaining this, Caroline. I ignored him and pulled out the contents. On top was a photograph, recent by the look of it, of James entering what appeared to be an apartment building I didn't recognize. Nothing incriminating there. I flipped to the next photo. James with a young woman, holding hands as they walked through Central Park. My heart stuttered, but I forced myself to remain composed. A colleague, James said dismissively, reading my expression. Mentoring a junior associate. Ask anyone at the firm. I continued through the stack. More photos of James with the same woman, at restaurants, entering hotels, one particularly damning image of them kissing in what looked like a parking garage. Each image was dated within the past 2 years. "Photoshopped," James said, his voice rising. "She's obsessed with destroying our marriage." But it was the documents beneath the photos that made my blood run cold. Bank statements showing regular transfers from James's personal account, an account I didn't know existed, to someone named Elena Richards. Lease agreements for an apartment in her name, with James listed as guarantor. Hotel receipts. A receipt. For a diamond bracelet from Tiffany that I'd never received. "Who is Elena Richards?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm brewing inside me. James's face had gone pale. "No one. This is all fabricated." "She's his mistress," Sophia said quietly. "One of them, at least." I looked up sharply. "One of them?" Sophia nodded toward the document still in my hand. "Keep going." The next set of papers was even more devastating. Legal documents, dated 3 years ago, 2 years into my marriage with James, showing the establishment of a trust fund. For a child. A little girl named Olivia Richards, with Elena listed as the mother and James as the father. Included was a birth certificate confirming James's paternity, dated just 18 months ago. The room started to spin. I had a child. No, James had a child. A child that wasn't mine, born well into our marriage. A daughter I knew nothing about. "Caroline," James said, his voice suddenly gentle, approaching me with hands outstretched. "I can explain all of this." "Can you explain the daughter you've been hiding from me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Can you explain why you've been maintaining a separate household while I've been begging you to start a family with me?" For the past 2 years, I'd been undergoing fertility treatments, suffering through hormones and procedures and crushing disappointment month after month, all while James apparently had a perfectly functioning ability to father children, just not with me. "It's complicated," he stammered. "It usually is," Sophia interjected, "when you're living a double life." I turned to her, suddenly remembering that she was still there, witnessing my world implode. "Why are you doing this? Why now?" "Because I was you," she said simply. 5 years ago, I was the fiancé planning her wedding while James was leading a double life. In my case, you were the other woman, though I don't think you knew it at the time. The room seemed to shrink around me as the implications of her words sank in. "We were still engaged when he began seeing you," Sophia continued. "He told me he was working late, traveling for business. Sound familiar?" It did. Too familiar. James had been working late with increasing frequency over the past 2 years. Business trips that stretched just a day or two longer than scheduled. The signs had been there, but I'd trusted him implicitly. "That's not true," James protested, but his defense lacked conviction. "Sophia and I were practically over when I met you, Caroline. We just hadn't made it official." "We were 3 months from our wedding day," Sophia countered. "The invitations had been sent. I'd bought my dress. I thought back to when James and I first met, at a charity gala in Boston. He'd mentioned a recent breakup, but had been vague about the details. We'd begun dating almost immediately, our relationship progressing at a whirlwind pace. 6 months later, he proposed. It had all seemed so romantic at the time. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked Sophia again, needing to understand her. "Motivation. Because 2 months ago, I ran into Elena at a medical conference. I'm a pediatric surgeon, she's a nurse. We got to talking, and she mentioned her daughter's father, a successful lawyer named James Hawthorne." James made a strangled sound. "I couldn't let him do to you what he did to me," Sophia concluded. "Not once I had proof." I looked down at the documents in my hands, evidence of a life my husband had been living parallel to ours. A secret apartment, a secret bank account, a secret child. The betrayal was so complete it felt almost surreal. "How could you?" I whispered, looking at James. "All those times I cried in your arms after another failed round of IVF. All those nights you held me and promised we'd have our family someday." "I do want a family with you," James insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "What happened with Elena was a mistake. One night that got out of hand." "One night?" I held up the bank statements. "These transfers have been happening regularly for over 2 years. The lease on her apartment is renewed annually." I flipped through more documents. "And these hotel stays span months." "That's not one night, James. That's a relationship." The worst part was how familiar this all felt. The lies, the gaslighting, the manipulation. It was exactly what my father had done to my mother 20 years ago. I'd sworn I would never let myself be deceived like she had been. I'd thought I was smarter, more observant, yet here I was, just as blind, just as betrayed. James took a step toward me, his expression pleading. "Caroline, please. Let's ask Sophia to leave, and we can discuss this privately. It's our anniversary. We can work through this." "Our anniversary," I repeated hollowly. 5 years of what I'd thought was a perfect marriage, built on a foundation of lies. "Tell me about Olivia," I said suddenly. "Your daughter. What's she like? Does she have your eyes? Your smile? Does she know who you are?" James flinched as if I'd slapped him. She looks like me," he admitted quietly. "And yes, she knows I'm her father. I see her when I can. When he was supposed to be working late. When he was allegedly on business trips. How many moments of our life together had been stolen so he could live his other life?" "I think you should leave," I told him, my voice surprisingly calm. "What?" "Caroline, no." "Not forever," I clarified, though I wasn't sure if that was true. "Just tonight. I need space to process all of this. I can't look at you right now without seeing every lie you've told me." "I'm not leaving you here on our anniversary," he insisted. "What will people think?" Always concerned with appearances. It was one of the things that had first attracted me to him. His polish, his perfect image. Now I wondered how much of it was just another carefully constructed facade. "I don't care what people think," I said. "For once in our marriage, this isn't about your reputation. It's about my sanity." Sophia, who had been silently watching our exchange, spoke up. "I know this is overwhelming, Caroline. I felt the same way when I discovered James's betrayal. If you need someone to talk to, someone who understands, I'm here." James let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, that's rich. You show up with your folder of destruction and then offer a shoulder to cry on? You've wanted to ruin us from the beginning." "No," Sophia said evenly. "I wanted to save her from what I went through. There's a difference." I looked between them, these two people who had both played such different roles in James's life. Sophia, the discarded fiancé, now serving as the unlikely messenger of truth. And James, my husband of 5 years, suddenly a stranger to me. "James, please go," I said again. "Go to the apartment, or to Elena's, or wherever you actually live when you're not with me. I'll handle things here. Caroline, go." I hadn't meant to shout, but the word exploded from me with such force that both James and Sophia startled. For a long moment, James just stared at me, a muscle working in his jaw. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving me alone with Sophia and the shattered remains of what I'd thought was my perfect life. I sank into a nearby chair, the envelope and its devastating contents clutched in my trembling hands. Outside, our anniversary celebration continued, our guests oblivious to the fact that there was nothing left to celebrate. "I'm sorry," Sophia said quietly, "for everything." I looked up at her, this woman who had once loved the same man I did, who had suffered the same betrayal. "No," I said. "I'm the one who should be sorry. I'm sorry I didn't believe you when you tried to warn me. I'm sorry we're both part of his collection of discarded women. You don't have to be, she said. Not anymore. I thought about the party waiting outside, about the perfect image James and I had projected for 5 years, about the fertility treatments, and the desperate hope for a child that had consumed me while my husband had been building a family elsewhere. I thought about the future I'd planned, now lying in ruins around me. What did you do? I asked Sophia. After you found out? A small, sad smile touched her lips. I picked myself up and rebuilt my life without him. It wasn't easy, but eventually, I realized his betrayal wasn't my failure. It was his. I nodded slowly, my mind racing with possibilities and plans. James had taken so much from me, my trust, my time, pieces of my heart. But he hadn't taken my strength or my dignity. Those, at least, I could reclaim. Thank you, I said to Sophia, standing up and gathering the evidence back into the envelope. For having the courage to do what I wish someone had done for you. She nodded, understanding passing between us. 2 women connected by the worst kind of betrayal, but perhaps also by the possibility of freedom from the same man's web of lies. I took a deep breath and squared my shoulders. Outside that door, dozens of guests were waiting, expecting to toast to 5 years of a marriage that now felt like nothing but an elaborate performance. James was gone, but the show wasn't over. Not yet. First, I needed answers. From James. From Elena. From anyone who had been complicit in maintaining his double life. And then I would decide what to salvage from the wreckage of my marriage, if anything at all. As I reached for the door handle, ready to face our guests with a composure I didn't feel, Sophia placed a gentle hand on my arm. Whatever you decide to do next, she said, remember that you deserve better than lies. We both did. I nodded, straightening my spine and lifting my chin. Tonight had been meant to celebrate 5 years of marriage. Instead, it had become the beginning of something else entirely, a reckoning that had been 5 years in the making. And as I stepped back into the ballroom, the manila envelope clutched tightly in my hand. I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets were waiting to be uncovered in the life I thought I knew so well. The moment I stepped back into the ballroom, the weight of expectation crashed over me like a wave. The string quartet had paused, and all eyes turned toward me, searching for answers. My anniversary dress, the emerald silk that had felt so special hours ago, now clung to me like a costume I couldn't wait to shed. Rebecca materialized at my side, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Where's James?" she whispered. "He's gone," I said simply, slipping the manila envelope into her hands. "Hold this for me. Don't let anyone else touch it." She accepted it without question, tucking it discreetly under her arm. My loyal sister, always there to catch me when I fell, and I was definitely falling now, even if I hadn't hit the ground yet. "What do you want me to tell people?" she asked. Scan the room. Our parents, James's colleagues, our mutual friends, all waiting for the anniversary dinner to begin, for the toasts and celebrations that now seemed like cruel mockery. Nothing yet, I decided. Let me handle it. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the small stage where the quartet was positioned. The lead violinist glanced at me questioningly, and I nodded, gesturing for the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my corporate training kicking in, steadying my voice despite the chaos inside me. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate with us. Unfortunately, James has been called away on an urgent matter." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I caught James's mother, Martha's narrowed eyes, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "The dinner will continue as planned," I continued smoothly. "Please enjoy yourselves. The night is still young." As I stepped down, the quartet resumed, playing, a lively piece that felt at odds with my shattered reality. Sophia had discreetly positioned herself near the bar, not quite part of the crowd, but not leaving either. Several guests were already throwing curious glances her way, no doubt wondering about her identity. My father-in-law Charles approached me, his aristocratic features arranged in a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Is everything all right? Caroline? Where's James?" "As I said, an urgent matter," I replied, matching his plastic smile with one of my own. "You know how it is in corporate law. Emergencies don't respect anniversaries." Charles nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. "And the woman? The one who arrived earlier?" "An old friend," I lied smoothly. "She had information James needed for a case. I see." He clearly didn't believe me, but propriety prevented him from pressing further in such a public setting. "Well, Martha and I won't stay too late without James here. Do give him our regards when he returns." When, not if. As if James's return to our life, to my life, was a certainty. Little did Charles know that nothing was certain anymore. As he walked away, I noticed a familiar figure approaching. David Chen, James's law partner, and supposedly his closest friend. The same David who'd stood as best man at our wedding, who'd dined at our home countless times, who'd looked me in the eye for 5 years without ever hinting that my husband was living a double life. "Caroline," he greeted me, his smooth voice betraying nothing. "That was quite an exit James made. Is everything okay?" I studied his face carefully. "You tell me, David, is there anything about my husband that I should know? Anything you might have forgotten to mention over the years?" A flash of something, guilt, unease, crossed his features before he covered it with a puzzled smile. "I'm not sure what you mean." "No." I tilted my head, observing him coolly. "Nothing about Elena. Richards? Or perhaps a child named Olivia?" The color drained from his face. "Caroline, how long have you known?" I asked quietly. David glanced around nervously, checking if anyone could overhear. "This isn't the place." "That's exactly what James said," I interrupted. "But you know what? I'm starting to think there is no right place to discuss how thoroughly I've been deceived by the people I trusted most." He swallowed hard. "It wasn't my place to tell you." "No," I agreed, a bitter smile twisting my lips. "What's a little betrayal between friends, right?" Before he could respond, I felt a presence at my side. Sophia had approached, holding 2 flutes of champagne. She offered one to me. "I thought you might need this," she said. I accepted the glass, gratefully, noticing how David's expression hardened at the sight of her. "Sophia," he acknowledged stiffly. "Still stirring up trouble, I see. Still enabling liars, I see," she countered smoothly. David turned back to me. "Be careful, Caroline. She has her own agenda." "And you don't?" I challenged. He had the decency to look ashamed. "I never wanted to hurt you. James is complicated." "No," I corrected him. "Cancer is complicated. Climate change is complicated. What James did, what you helped him conceal, is simply wrong." David opened his mouth to reply, but I'd already turned away, moving through the crowd with Sophia by my side. I felt lightheaded, as if I were floating above the scene, watching myself navigate this nightmare with a composure I didn't know I possessed. "Who else knows?" I asked Sophia quietly, as we reached a relatively secluded corner of the ballroom. "From what I gathered from Elena, quite a few people in James's inner circle," she replied. "His parents, certainly. David, obviously. A few other close colleagues at the firm." The betrayal expanded, encompassing not just James, but our entire social world. How many dinners had I hosted where guests smiled to my face while knowing my husband was maintaining a second household? How many sympathetic looks had been exchanged behind my back as I'd discussed our fertility struggles, unaware that James had fathered a child with another woman? "Your in-laws are watching us," Sophia observed. I followed her gaze to where Martha and Charles stood, their heads bent together, in intense conversation, their eyes occasionally darting our way. "Let them watch," I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. "I'm done worrying about appearances." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text message. "James, we need to talk. I'm coming back." I stared at the screen, a mix of emotions churning. Inside me, rage, hurt, a strange sense of relief that at least now I knew the truth. I showed the message to Sophia. "What are you going to do?" she asked. It was the question I'd been avoiding since opening that envelope. What was I going to do? Stay and fight? Leave and start over? Confront Elena? Meet the child who should have been part of my life from the beginning? "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I'm not having that conversation here, surrounded by people who've been lying to me for years." I quickly texted back, "Don't bother. I won't be here." His response was immediate. "Where are you going?" I didn't reply. Instead, I turned to Sophia. "I need to get out of here. Can you help me make a graceful exit?" She nodded without hesitation. "Of course." I found Rebecca near the gift table and pulled her aside. "I'm leaving," I told her quietly. "Can you make my excuses? Say I wasn't feeling—" "Well?" Concern filled her eyes. "Where will you go? Do you want me to come with you?" I shook my head. "Not tonight. I need space to think. I'll call you tomorrow, I promise." I gestured to the envelope she was still guarding. "And keep that safe. For me?" Rebecca embraced me tightly. "Whatever you need. And Caroline, you're stronger than you know." I hugged her back, drawing strength from her unwavering support, then slipped away to collect my purse and wrap from the coat check room where my world had unraveled just an hour earlier. As I prepared to leave, Martha Hawthorne appeared in the doorway, her elegant figure silhouetted against the light from the ballroom. "Running away?" she asked, her voice carrying that particular blend of concern and condescension she'd perfected over the years. "Taking a moment," I corrected, wrapping my cashmere stole around my shoulders. She stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind her. In the muted light, I could see the family resemblance to James, the same sharp jawline, the same calculating eyes. "Whatever Sophia told you," she began, "you should know she's always been unstable, jealous, unable to accept that James chose you." I laughed, a short, hollow sound. "Is that what you tell yourself? That he chose me?" "He didn't choose either of us, Martha. He chose to lie. To both of us. And apparently, to you too. Unless you've known about Elena and Olivia all along." Something flickered in her eyes, not surprise, but resignation. "So it's true then. She told you everything." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. "You knew," I whispered. "You've known all along." Martha sighed, suddenly looking older than her 60 years. "James has always been complicated." That's exactly what David said. Funny how complicated seems to be the euphemism of choice. For lying, cheating bastard? "Watch your tone," she snapped, her aristocratic pride flaring. "Whatever James has done, he's still my son." "And Elena? What is she to you? And Olivia? Your granddaughter?" The word felt strange on my tongue, a role I'd been denied even as another woman's child had claimed it. Martha looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "We've only met the child twice. James keeps that part of his life separate." "How convenient for all of you," I said bitterly. "One big, happy family secret." "It wasn't my place to tell you," she insisted, echoing David's earlier defense. "No, it was James's. But he chose not to, and you all chose to protect him instead of warning me." I gathered my things, preparing to brush past her. 5 years of fertility treatments, Martha. 5 years of doctors and hormones and heartbreak. And all this time he knew he could father a child. He just couldn't be honest with me. Martha reached for my arm, her fingers surprisingly strong for a woman her age. Don't make any hasty decisions. Caroline, every marriage has its challenges. I stared at her, incredulous. Challenges? Is that what we're calling this? Finding out my entire marriage has been built on lies isn't a challenge, Martha. It's a betrayal of everything I thought we were. James loves you, she insisted. In his way. His way isn't good enough anymore. I pulled free of her grip and walked out, leaving her standing alone in the room where my marriage had effectively ended an hour earlier. Sophia was waiting for me near the exit, away from curious eyes. Ready? She asked. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontations was beginning to fade, leaving a bone-deep weariness in its wake. My car's outside, she offered. I can take you anywhere you need to go. I hesitated only briefly before accepting. Despite the strangeness of the situation, leaving my own anniversary party with my husband's ex-fiancé, Sophia felt like the only honest person in the room. The only one who had cared enough to tell me the truth. As we slipped out a side entrance to avoid drawing attention, I caught a glimpse of the celebration continuing without me. The glittering lights, the flowing champagne, the smiling faces of people who had been complicit in my husband's deception for years. The night air was cool against my flushed skin as we hurried across the parking lot to Sophia's sleek silver Audi. Once inside, she turned to me. Where to? Hadn't thought that far ahead. I couldn't go home. James would be there, waiting to spin his excuses, to try to salvage what was left of our marriage. I needed space, time, perspective. I don't know, I admitted. A hotel, I guess. Sophia paused, seemingly debating something internally. I have a better idea, if you're open to it. My family has a vacation house on Long Island. It's empty this time of year. No one would think to look for you there, and you could have the privacy you need to figure out your next steps. Under normal circumstances, accepting such an offer from my husband's ex would be unthinkable, but nothing about this night was normal, and the thought of a quiet place away from prying eyes was tempting. Won't that be strange for you? I asked. Helping me like this? She shrugged, starting the car. Stranger than finding out the man who left me was leading a double life with multiple women? Not really. Besides, if I'd had someone to help me, through the aftermath of James's betrayal, maybe I wouldn't have spent a year rebuilding my life from scratch. As we pulled away from the venue, I caught sight of a familiar car turning into the lot. James's midnight blue Maserati, the one he'd bought himself as a partnership bonus last year. I slumped lower in my seat, not ready to face him yet. Sophia noticed. That's him, isn't it? I nodded, watching in the side mirror as he parked and rushed toward the entrance, straightening his tie as he went. Always impeccably presented, even when his life was falling apart. Or perhaps especially then. He won't find you in time, Sophia assured me, accelerating onto the highway. By the time he realizes you're gone, we'll be well on our way. I leaned back against the headrest, watching the city lights blur as we sped eastward. I keep thinking about her, I said after a long silence. Elena, what she's like, whether she knows about me. Sophia kept her eyes on the road. From what little interaction I had with her, she seemed nice, ordinary. A pediatric nurse who loves her work. She knows about you, yes. James told her. You two had an arrangement. An arrangement? I repeated, disbelieving. That you knew about her and Olivia, but preferred to maintain separate households for the sake of appearances. That you couldn't have children but had given him your blessing to have a family with her. The betrayal deepened with every revelation. James hadn't just lied to me. He'd created an entire false narrative for Elena, painting me as some cold, calculating society wife who had agreed to his arrangement for convenience. Did she believe him? I asked. Sophia sighed. For a long time, yes. It's what she wanted to believe. But recently, she'd started to have doubts. That's why she approached me when we met at the conference. She'd done some digging, found out about James's engagement to me, and wanted to know if his pattern with me matched what she was experiencing with him. And did it? She nodded grimly. Almost exactly. The constant work emergencies, the business, trips that seemed to multiply, the growing emotional distance. The realization hit me like a freight train. He's seeing someone else, isn't he? Beyond Elena and me? Sophia glanced at me, her expression confirming my suspicion before she even spoke. We think so. Elena found receipts for jewelry neither of us received. Charges at restaurants in cities where neither of us live. Phone records showing calls to numbers that don't belong to either of us. I laughed. A hollow, broken sound. So not just a double life. A triple life. Maybe more. James was never content with just one of anything, Sophia said quietly. Not cars, not houses, not women. We drove in silence for a while, the rhythmic sound of tires on asphalt oddly soothing. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from James, each more urgent than the last. I switched it to silent without reading any of them. We'd been trying for a baby, I said suddenly, the words spilling out before I could stop them. For 2 years. Fertility treatments, specialists, everything. We had an appointment next week to discuss IVF options. Sophia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I'm so sorry, Caroline. All those nights I cried myself to sleep wondering what was wrong with me, why I couldn't conceive. And all along he knew. He knew he could father a child. He already had. The cruelty of it was staggering. While I'd been injecting myself with hormones, tracking my cycle religiously, researching every possible way to increase our chances of conception, James had been playing father to a child I knew nothing about. What kind of person does that? I wondered aloud. What kind of emptiness must exist inside someone to hurt people so deliberately? I've spent 5 years trying to understand that, Sophia admitted. I still don't have an answer. As we left the city behind, the traffic thinned and the night grew darker. The miles between me and my former life stretched, each one offering a small measure of breathing room, of clarity. What happened after? I asked. After you found out about James and me? How did you move forward? Sophia considered the question, her profile illuminated by the dashboard lights. Not well at first, she admitted. I was angry. Devastated. I thought I'd never trust anyone again. And now? A small smile touched her lips. I'm engaged. To a pediatric oncologist I met through work. A good man. An honest man. How did you know? I pressed. How did you trust that he wasn't like James? She thought for a moment. I didn't. Not right away. But eventually, I realized that refusing to trust again meant James was still controlling my life, even after he was gone, and I was done giving him that power. Her words resonated deeply, touching something raw and vulnerable inside me. How much power would I give James over my future? How long would I let his betrayal define me? We're almost there, Sophia said as we turned onto a narrow road lined with towering trees. The house is just ahead. Through the darkness, I could make out the silhouette of a modest beach house nestled among the dunes. Not ostentatious, but charming in its simplicity, the opposite of everything in James's carefully curated world. As Sophia parked and we stepped out into the salt-laden air, I felt something shift inside me. The numbness that had encased me since opening that manila envelope began to crack, allowing the first tendrils of anger to seep through. Not just anger at James, but at myself for being so blind, at everyone who had helped maintain his facade. Thank you, I said to Sophia as she unlocked the front door. For everything, she nodded, understanding in her eyes. Get some rest. Tomorrow, you can start figuring out what comes next. What comes next? Such a simple phrase for the monumental task. Ahead of me, untangling 5 years of marriage, deciding whether to confront Elena, grappling with the existence of a stepdaughter I'd never met, rebuilding my sense of self from the ground up. As I stepped into the quiet sanctuary of the beach house, leaving the chaos of my anniversary night, behind, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. Whatever came next, it would be on my terms. Not James's, not society's, not anyone's but mine. The door closed behind us, shutting out the world and all its complications. For tonight, at my least I could breathe. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own revelations. But for now, the sound of waves breaking on the shore outside was enough to drown out the noise in my head, offering a momentary peace amidst the storm that had become my life. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains, momentarily disorienting me as I opened my eyes. For a blissful few seconds, I existed in the liminal space between sleep and wakefulness, free from the knowledge that had shattered my world the night before. Then reality crashed back, and the weight of James's betrayal settled on my chest like a physical thing, making it difficult to breathe. I sat up, taking in my surroundings. Sophia's beach house was charming in the daylight, whitewashed walls, weathered wooden floors, simple but tasteful furnishings, the kind of place that invited you to leave your shoes at the door and your worries at the gate. Unfortunately, my worries had followed me inside. My phone lay on the nightstand where I'd placed it the night before, deliberately powered off to silence the barrage of texts and calls from James. With a deep breath, I switched it on, bracing myself for the aftermath. The notifications flooded in immediately. 27 missed calls from James, 13 voicemails, 46 text messages, several calls from my in-laws, a dozen concerned texts from friends who'd been at the party, 3 messages from Rebecca, assuring me she'd handled things after I left and was ready to help whenever I needed her. I scrolled through James's increasingly desperate texts. "Where are you? Please come home so we can talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Don't throw away 5 years over one mistake. I love you. Only you." The rest was just complicated. There it was again. Complicated. As if that word could possibly encompass the deliberate, sustained deception he'd maintained throughout our entire marriage. The last message had been sent at 3:42 a.m. "I'm coming to find you. You can't hide from this conversation forever." A chill ran through me. Hide. That's exactly what I was doing, wasn't it? Hiding in his ex-fiance's beach house while trying to process that my entire marriage had been built on quicksand. But James was right about one thing. I couldn't hide forever. Sooner or later, I would have to face him, face Elena, face the reality of my new normal. The smell of coffee drifted up from downstairs, followed by soft movements in the kitchen. Sophia was awake. I pulled on the robe she'd lent me the night before and made my way downstairs, my body on autopilot while my mind raced with questions and possibilities. Sophia looked up as I entered the kitchen, offering a tentative smile. "How did you sleep?" "Surprisingly well, all things considered," I admitted, accepting the mug of coffee she held out. But waking up was brutal. She nodded in understanding. The first morning is the worst, when reality comes rushing back after a few moments of peace. I sank into a chair at the small breakfast table, gazing out at the ocean visible through the wide windows. "James has been texting all night, calling. He says he's going to find me." Sophia's expression tightened. "He won't look here. He doesn't even know about this place. My parents bought it after our engagement ended." That was something, at least. A temporary sanctuary while I figured out my next move. "What are you thinking?" Sophia asked, joining me at the table with her own mug. I stared into the dark depths of my coffee. I think I need to meet her, Elena and Olivia." Sophia looked surprised but didn't argue. "Are you sure that's what you want?" "Want? No. But need?" "Yes." I took a sip of my coffee, appreciating its strong, bitter bite, I can't make any decisions until I see for myself, until I understand exactly what James has been building behind my back. It won't be easy, she warned, for any of you. Nothing about this is easy, I replied, but I'm done taking the easiest path. That's what got me here in the first place. Trusting without verifying. Believing without questioning. Sophia studied me for a moment, then nodded. I can arrange it if you're sure. Elena and I have been in contact since the medical conference. She's wary, but I think she'd be willing to meet you. Today, I said decisively, before I lose my nerve. Sophia hesitated only briefly before pulling out her phone. I'll text her. While she did that, I stepped outside onto the small deck overlooking the beach. The morning was cool but sunny, the endless expanse of ocean providing a sense of perspective my troubled mind desperately needed. In the grand scheme of things, my problems were just one tiny drop in that vast blue expanse. Somehow that thought was comforting. When I returned inside, Sophia was waiting, her expression cautious. She agreed, she said. 3 o'clock this afternoon, at a park near her apartment. She'll have Olivia with her. My heart stuttered. In just a few hours, I would meet the child my husband had fathered while married to me. The child he'd hidden from me while I'd undergone fertility treatments and cried over negative pregnancy tests month after month. Thanks you. You, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Sophia reached across the table, briefly touching my hand. You don't have to thank me. If anything, I should be apologizing for not finding you sooner. I shook my head. You couldn't have known. Maybe not, but I suspected James hadn't changed his ways. I just didn't have proof until Elena reached out. She sighed. When we were engaged, there were signs I ignored. Phone calls he'd take in another room. Late nights at the office that didn't match the firm's billing records. Little inconsistencies that I rationalized away because I was in love and planning a wedding. Her words echoed my own experience so precisely it was eerie. Had James simply copied and pasted his behavior patterns from one relationship to the next, confident that each woman would make the same excuses for him? What? About you? I asked. Have you been able to move forward? Really move forward? A genuine smile lit Sophia's face for the first time since I'd met her. Yes, Michael, my fiancé. He's nothing like James. Honest to a fault, actually. Sometimes brutally so. She laughed softly. The first time we argued, he laid out everything. He was feeling point by point. It was so different from James's evasions and deflections that I almost didn't know how to respond. I tried to imagine such straightforward communication after 5 years with James, who could talk for hours without ever really saying anything of substance. It seemed like a foreign concept. He sounds wonderful, I said sincerely. He is. She hesitated. Caroline, I know this seems impossible now, but you will find happiness again. Whether that's alone or with someone new, you're not broken by what James did. I wanted to believe her. But standing at the beginning of this journey, with the ruins of my marriage still smoldering around me, it was hard to imagine ever trusting anyone again. I should get ready, I said, changing the subject. If I'm meeting Elena and Olivia, I want to look composed. Sophia nodded in understanding. I've put some clothes that might fit you in the guest room closet. Nothing fancy, but clean and comfortable. I thanked her and returned upstairs to shower and dress. As the hot water washed over me, I allowed myself to fully feel every emotion I'd been holding at bay. The rage, the hurt, the humiliation, but also, surprisingly, a flicker of relief. The relief of finally understanding why certain pieces of my marriage had never quite fit together, why James had always felt slightly out of reach even when he was lying right beside me. By the time I emerged, dressed in borrowed jeans and a simple blue sweater, I felt steadier. Not healed, not even close, but ready to face the next chapter of this nightmare with my dignity intact. Sophia was waiting by the door, car keys in hand. Ready when you are. The drive back into the city passed mostly in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. As we approached the small neighborhood park where Elena had agreed to meet us, my anxiety spiked. What would I say to her? What could I possibly say to Olivia? Sophia seemed to sense my growing panic. "You don't have to do this today," she said. "We can turn around right now if you want." I shook my head firmly. No, I need to see them with my own eyes. To make this real. She parked on a quiet street lined with autumn-touched trees. "The playground is just through there," she said, pointing to a path that wound between vibrant orange and yellow foliage. Elena said she'd be by the swings. I took a deep breath and opened the car door. "Are you coming with me? Do you want me to?" I considered the question. "Just to make introductions. Then, I think I need to do this part alone." Sophia nodded, and together we walked the winding path to the playground. It was a beautiful fall day, and the park was alive with the sounds of children playing, parents chatting, and leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Under different circumstances, it would have been a perfectly pleasant afternoon. We spotted Elena before she saw us. A slender woman with honey blonde hair pulled back in a loose ponytail sitting on a bench near the swings. Beside her, a little girl with dark curls was intently focusing on a picture book, her small fingers tracing the colorful illustrations. My heart seized in my chest. Even from this distance, I could see James in the child's profile. The same distinctive jawline, the same way of tilting her head slightly as she concentrated. His daughter, a child who shared his blood, his features, his DNA. Everything I had wanted to give him but couldn't. Elena looked up as we approached, her expression cautious but not hostile. She stood as we reached the bench, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Elena," Sophia said quietly. "This is Caroline." Elena nodded once, her gaze never leaving my face. "I know. I've seen your picture before, in James's wallet." The revelation struck me like a physical blow. James had carried my photo while visiting his other family. Had he looked at it while holding his daughter? While making love to Elena? The thought made me slightly nauseous. "I didn't know about you," I said, the words coming out more sharply than I'd intended. "Not until last night." Elena's expression softened slightly. "I know that now. I believed him when he said you did. That you had an arrangement." She glanced down at the little girl still absorbed in her book. "He can be very convincing when he wants to be." "Yes," I agreed softly. "He can." An awkward silence fell between us, three women connected by the same man's deception. Sophia squeezed my arm gently. "I'll leave you two to talk. I'll be over by the fountain if you need me." As she walked away, Elena gestured to the bench. "Would you like to sit?" I nodded, lowering myself onto the wooden slats, careful to maintain some distance between us. Up close, I could see that Elena was pretty in a natural, unassuming way. Kind eyes, laugh lines just beginning to form at their corners, a sprinkling of freckles across her nose. Not the predatory homewrecker I'd imagined in my darkest moments the night before, but a woman who, like me, had been caught in James's web. "This is Olivia," Elena said, her voice softening as she glanced at her daughter. "Liv, can you say hello to Mrs. Hawthorne? She's a friend of Daddy's." The little girl looked up, and I found myself staring into a pair of startlingly familiar hazel eyes. James's eyes. Exactly as I'd seen them across the breakfast table for 5 years. "Hello," Olivia said politely, with the careful enunciation of a child who has recently mastered the art of greeting strangers. "Do you like dragons?" I'm reading about dragons. I swallowed hard past the lump in my throat. I do like dragons, I managed. Very much. Satisfied with my answer, Olivia returned to her book, leaving the adults to their complicated conversation. She's beautiful, I said honestly, unable to tear my gaze away from the child who could have been, should have been, a part of my life. Thank you, Elena replied, her voice soft with maternal pride. She's smart too, already reading ahead of her age group. Another trait inherited from James, who had always devoured books as if they were oxygen. How? I hesitated, unsure how to phrase the question delicately. How did you and James meet? Elena tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her expression turning wistful. At a hospital fundraiser. I was working the event as a volunteer, and he was there representing his firm. He was charming, attentive, made me feel like the only person in the room. She gave a small, sad laugh. I'm guessing you know exactly what that feels like. I nodded. The night we met, James had focused on me with such intensity it had been intoxicating, as if every word I spoke was fascinating, every thought I shared brilliant and unique. Only now did I understand it was a performance he had perfected through endless repetition. When did you find out about me? I asked. Elena sighed, absently adjusting Olivia's sweater as she spoke. I always knew he was married, from the very beginning. He told me it was a marriage of convenience, that you two had an understanding, that you couldn't have children but didn't want to divorce for social reasons. She looked at me apologetically. I should have questioned it more, but I was already falling for him, and it was easier to believe what he was telling me. I couldn't even blame her. Hadn't I done the same thing, accepting James's increasingly flimsy excuses for late nights and missed weekends because the alternative was too painful to contemplate? When did you start to suspect it wasn't true? I pressed. About 6 months, ago. His visits became less frequent. He was always checking his phone when he was with us. The same patterns that emerged when he was pulling away from me after Olivia was born. She shook her head ruefully. I hired a private investigator, thought I'd find evidence of another woman. Instead, I discovered that you, the wife who supposedly knew all about me, had no idea I existed. And that's when you contacted Sophia? Elena nodded. We met by chance at a medical conference. I recognized her name from some old photos James had tried to hide. I approached her, we started talking, and, well, the pieces started falling into place. The playground around us continued its normal rhythm. Children laughing, parents calling out, the creak of swings and slide of metal against metal. Normal life, while my world had been turned upside down. Do you love him? I asked suddenly. Unable to stop myself, Elena didn't flinch from the question. I did. Very much. But now? She glanced at her daughter, lowering her voice. Now I don't even know who he is. The James I love doesn't exist. He was a character created specifically. For me, just like the James you married was created for you. Her words resonated painfully. Who was the real James Hawthorne? Had either of us ever known him? What happens now? I asked. The question that had been haunting me since opening that envelope. Elena was quiet for a moment, watching Olivia turn, the pages of her book. I don't know, I've been asking myself the same thing. But I do know this. Olivia deserves better than a father who treats her like a secret, who can only spare a few hours here and there between his other lives. And you? What do you deserve? She met my gaze directly. The same thing you do. Honesty. Respect. A partner who isn't ashamed to acknowledge me in public. I nodded, understanding perfectly. Despite our vastly different circumstances, our desires were remarkably aligned. James called me this morning, Elena admitted. He knows something's wrong. Suspect Sophia has reached out to me, to you. What did you tell him? Nothing, she said firmly. I told him Olivia and I were busy today and I'd call him tomorrow. I wanted to meet you first, to see— She trailed off. To see if I was the villain he painted me as? I suggested. She smiled faintly. Something like that. Olivia, apparently finished with her book, tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mommy, can I swing now? Elena nodded, smoothing her daughter's wild curls. Of course, sweetie. Just stay where I can see you. We watched as Olivia scampered to the swings, her little legs pumping as she tried to gain momentum. She doesn't suspect anything's wrong? I asked. No. James has always been intermittent in her life. Here for a weekend. Gone for 2 weeks. She's used to it. Elena's voice held a trace of bitterness. She doesn't know any different. I felt a surge of anger on behalf of this child who had been denied a full-time father because James had been too busy juggling his various lives to be consistently present in any of them. I want you to know, I said carefully, that whatever happens between James and me, I don't blame you or Olivia. You're as much a victim in this as I am. Elena's eyes welled with unexpected tears. Thank you for saying that. I've been so afraid of this meeting. Afraid you'd hate me, blame me. A few hours ago I might have, I admitted. But sitting here, talking to you, I can see that James manipulated us both, played on our insecurities, our desires, our trust. She nodded, discreetly wiping away a tear. He's very good at finding exactly what you need and becoming that person, isn't he? Too good, I agreed. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching Olivia swing higher and higher, her face alight with the simple joy of childhood. I have to face him, I said eventually. Tonight or tomorrow. I can't keep avoiding the conversation. What will you say? Elena asked. I considered the question carefully. What did you say to a man who had systematically deceived you for the entirety of your relationship? Who had watched you suffer through fertility treatments knowing he'd fathered a child with another woman? Who had created elaborate fictions to maintain multiple lives? I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm done with the lies, done with the pretending. Whatever happens next, it has to be based on truth. Elena's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, her expression darkening. It's him, again. You should answer, I suggested. Act normal. Let him think everything's fine for now. She nodded, taking a deep breath before answering. Hi, James. Yes, we're still at the park. No, nothing's wrong. Why would you think that tomorrow night works fine? Yes, she'll be excited to see you. Okay, bye. She hung up, her hands trembling slightly. He's coming over tomorrow night. Says he has something important to discuss. I think he's going to try to manage the situation, I finished for her. Contain the damage. The thought of James methodically planning how to keep both his lives from collapsing made my blood boil. Let him come. Elena looked at me in surprise. You want me to see him? Yes, I said, an idea forming in my mind. Let him think everything's normal, that you don't know anything about what happened last night. And then what? I found myself smiling, though there was no warmth in it. And then we give James Hawthorne exactly what he deserves, the truth, served cold. As we continued talking, developing a plan that would force James to face both of us at once, I felt a strange sense of camaraderie with Elena. We were allies now, united by a common betrayal and a shared determination to reclaim our dignity. Later, as I watched Olivia run back to her mother, arms outstretched for a hug, I felt a pang of what might have been. In another life, this child could have been a beloved stepdaughter, a connection to the man I thought I knew. Instead, she was living proof of the most fundamental lie in my marriage. I should go, I said, standing up. Thank you for meeting me, for showing me the truth. Elena nodded, holding Olivia close. Tomorrow night, then. Tomorrow night, I confirmed. As I walked back toward where Sophia was waiting, my steps felt lighter somehow. The pain was still there, raw and throbbing, but alongside it had emerged something new, a fierce determination to take control of my narrative, to stop being a pawn in James's elaborate game. James had spent 5 years crafting a masterpiece of deception. Tomorrow night, all his careful work would come crashing down around him, and I, the wife he had so thoroughly underestimated, would be there to witness it. The expression on James's face when he walked into Elena's apartment and found me sitting there was worth every tear I'd shed. He froze in the doorway, his carefully rehearsed smile crumbling into shock as his two worlds collided spectacularly before his eyes. "Caroline," he whispered, his voice cracking. "What are you doing here?" "Waiting for you," I replied calmly. Elena and I thought it was time we had a conversation. All 3 of us. Elena emerged from the kitchen, her posture straight, her gaze steady. "Hello, James." He looked between us, calculating, already formulating, explanations, excuses, ways to divide and manipulate us as he had for years. I could practically see the wheels turning behind his eyes. "This isn't what you think," he began, using the oldest line in the book. "It's exactly what we think." I cut him off. "We know everything, James. About Elena, about Olivia, about the apartment, the bank accounts. And we're beginning to suspect there's even more we haven't uncovered yet." His facade cracked completely then, desperation replacing calculation. "I love you both," he insisted, "in different ways. I never meant to hurt anyone." "That's the difference between us," Elena said quietly. "We never meant to hurt anyone. You built your entire life on hurting people, on lies and manipulation. Where's Olivia?" he asked, glancing around as if hoping to use his daughter as a shield. "With my sister," Elena replied. "She doesn't need to witness this." What followed was 2 hours of James alternating between desperate apologies and self-serving justifications. We listened silently, no longer susceptible to his charm or his lies. When he finally ran out of words, I handed him divorce papers already prepared by my attorney. "Sign them," I said, "or I take everything I've learned to your firm's managing partners. I'm sure they'd be fascinated to know how you've been misusing company resources to maintain your multiple households." His hand trembled as he signed. I felt no triumph, only relief. 1 month later, I sold our house and moved into a sunlit apartment overlooking the park. 2 months after that, Elena and I met for coffee, a new tradition that helped us both heal. Olivia, now aware that Daddy's friend Caroline was actually more complicated than that, took to bringing me her favorite books when I visited. Sophia and her fiancé invited me to their wedding. I went, no longer feeling like the replacement, but like someone who had survived the same storm and come out stronger. James, I heard, had moved to Chicago. Started over, most likely looking for new women to deceive. But his power over us was gone. Yesterday, Elena called with surprising news. Her modest medical research paper had been accepted for publication in a prestigious journal. "I never would have submitted it if you hadn't encouraged me," she said. "James always told me it wasn't good enough." "He was wrong about a lot of things," I replied, smiling as I watched the sunset from my balcony. As the evening light painted the city gold, I realized that the anniversary that had shattered my world had also unexpectedly set me free, not just from James's deception, but from the limitations I'd placed on myself while trying to be the perfect wife to an imperfect man. Some endings, it turns out, are really beginnings in disguise. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories, right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.